Was Leonardo da Vinci a part of the LGTB community, and was his boyfriend the muse for his painting of Jesus?
Ruslan.
People depicting Jesus in their own ethnic identity, and some people make Jesus Asian in their depictions, some people make Jesus black, there's obviously the blonde hair, blue-eyed trope that some people feel has been weaponized against other people. But you were like, hey, I don't really have a problem with people depicting Jesus in their image. Tell me why.
Yeah, so I don't think historically Christians have had issues with this.
Okay.
So if we look at actually the development of where Christianity spread and how people have depicted Jesus, it's been all over the map. So whether you look at like Russian Orthodox icons or the Armenian stuff or the Greek stuff, European stuff, it looks like the images look like the people who are actually drawing them. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It doesn't bother me one bit because I think it screams out, it shouts incarnation.
Interesting.
Because that is exactly what we're talking about when we talk about Emmanuel, God with us. So I know we generally speak about it in the sense of he became human like one of us, yet without sin, went through everything we go through, was a baby, X, Y, and Z. But to identify with Jesus within the way you look, within your culture, how you act, I think is a very, very Christian and biblical thing.
What do you think about the notion where some people will go, yeah, but isn't that breaking the command, don't make images of God, right? Like, how is that different? Because that's going to be the rebuttal. The comments are coming. I could see them to this video. How do you feel about that?
Well, God very clearly made an image of himself in like human form. So the questioning there in regards to making images is always related to like images that don't do justice to who God actually is, because anything of that sort doesn't capture the essence of God. And the way ancients looked at idols and creating like things that capture the essence of the deity and stuff like that, that's what's really after. We're not doing any of that stuff, right? We're not saying this image of Jesus is something that we should worship, or even more than that, like it has the essence of like Jesus is in it or something like that. It has nothing to do with that. Christian art has been a thing from the beginning. Nobody's had issues with it. I think when the Old Testament is talking about don't make any images of God, there's a completely different context there as to why God commands the people not to do any of that stuff.
Yeah. Now, have you ever heard this? This is probably more of a conspiracy, and you could tell me if it is. This entire thing of the way our modern day depiction of it from, was it Michelangelo, the painting of Jesus, or was it Da Vinci?
I think Da Vinci.
Da Vinci, excuse me, not Michelangelo. Da Vinci, and they're like, oh, well, Da Vinci really just drew an image of his gay lover, and then that's really Jesus. Have you ever heard this conspiracy?
No.
Okay.
As far as I know, there's comments about Cesare Borgia, Pope Alexander's son, looking very much like the Jesus that we're used to seeing. But I actually I think there's more of a legitimate artistic development of these things. So if you look up the Shroud of Turin, right? Like, and there's different x-rays of the shroud and stuff like that. And then you kind of make that transparent and put it on some of the more ancient icons and images of Jesus. There's a lot of similarities. So I think cultures drew Jesus maybe on the shroud, based on the shroud. And then they shared it amongst each other. And then there's also different ideologies that go into that, right?
So you're saying the shroud, you would lean towards it is not authentic? It's probably...
No, I have no idea whether the shroud is authentic. I think it's old, and I think it seems... I don't know whether there's any research on this or not, so take it for what it is. But I think the shroud influenced at least some images and paintings of Jesus.
Yeah. Here's the article, by the way. So it's not an article. This is a Reddit forum.
Yeah.
Was Leonardo da Vinci a part of the LGTV community
gosh.
and was his boyfriend the muse for his painting of Jesus. She recently said Armenian, which applied this to be true. Even in the comments, I saw one talking about how this person's history teacher told their case about this being true. So this is being taught by history teachers, according to this Reddit forum. Now, I don't know how trustworthy Reddit is. I personally didn't find any evidence of this being certain. Everything I found on the Leonardo da Vinci boyfriend was about Cesare
Borgia.
Borgia.
Cesare Borgia, yeah.
But no accounts of him and Leo dating, only speculation. Furthermore, the face of Jesus was
as far as I know, Cesare Borgia was like a big-time womanizer. So if that's to be taken for him being
well,
same-sex attractive,
if he was
maybe so. I mean, his
on the
dad,
down low, and so he's therefore,
look, my issue is modern-day stuff, and especially when it comes to the sexuality conversation, is there's a lot of revisionist history.
Sure.
So we see certain interactions between people and immediately read into it cultural stuff like, oh, they were suppressing this and that, instead of just like, yeah, that guy was a, adulterer or fornicator and he was a deviant or something like that. It immediately, like, unless you have evidence historically, like if you're doing proper history, you got to go with the evidence. You can't just make claims because something might have been some way.
Sure.
Like,
and people, everybody wants to appropriate their agenda, and then we'll kind of loop in.
So that's the funny thing. So I said the same thing in regards to that image being Cesare Borgia, but they've added the added component of, Da Vinci and Borgia had a relationship.
Yeah.
Like,
so can you tell us who is
data.
Cesare Borgia?
Cesare Borgia was the son of Pope Alexander, who was like an infamous pope. There's been a bunch of recent TV series and stuff on the Borgias. They were a big family. And
oh snap! I mean, that does kind of
yeah. I mean, when
that
you look
definitely
at the image,
looks like that image of Jesus,
correct.
bro.
Yeah.
Wow. This.
Yeah. And so they were all contemporaries, Da Vinci and the Borgias and stuff like that. But Pope Alexander did a lot of wacky stuff, man. He had kids. Obviously, for a pope, he's not supposed to have kids.
Oh.
He can't get married.
Oops.
This guy had a bunch of kids. He, at one point or another, he took like a year sabbatical and made his daughter pope.
Really?
Yeah, it's some weird. It's a very interesting kind of weird
this is what,
family.
1700s?
This is
1500s?
Yeah, so
Luther had good reason, is what you're saying.
The interesting thing is, I would say Pope Alexander or the Borgias, that was probably the worst time in regards to like papal corruption.
Sure.
Like this guy would have been it. And if you look at it, I think Luther was a kid or a teenager when this guy was pope. Like, so they all crossed over. These are things Luther would have seen.
Sure.
And so, yeah, I mean, if you're looking at that kind of a corruption and it's like, wait, the Pope very openly has children. He's not even trying to hide it. He's like, you know. And there's all sorts of political maneuverings. He, like, papal armies, his sons are governing over and trying to kind of monopolize power and stuff. And for him to say, no, man, this thing's really gotten out of hand.
Yeah.
Contextually, it makes quite a bit of sense.
Do you know, I don't like doing this because I'd rather just talk to a Catholic person about this, but do they acknowledge that, like, some pretty wonky popes that we've had over the years? Like,
as far as I know, yes.
They do acknowledge it. Yeah. Okay.
So I think the more reasonable way I've seen people go about it is not to cover it up and say, no, every pope has done that. Just can't historically.
Sure.
But they might speak about a distinction between the office versus the person.
We see, according to the Bible, that prayer is extremely important in terms of us being transformed from the inside out when we get aligned with God's will. For the Christians watching this channel, I want you guys to implement these spiritual disciplines in your day-to-day life. And the only way I've been able to do this consistently is through writing down my prayers in a prayer journal that does a few things. One, it allows me to reflect and come to God humbly and ask Him to move on my behalf. And two, it allows me to document my prayers, which ultimately help me remember the very things that I was praying for and see the hand of God tangibly in my life when He answers them. So I would urge you, consider writing down your prayers. It could be in a blank notebook. It could even be on your phone. Or you could check out the one I personally designed and used for my own quiet time and spiritual discipline that I think will be a huge blessing. It's the exact structure and system that I've used for years to pray and be more consistent in my spiritual disciplines. You can pick yours up today by clicking the link in the pinned comment below. All right, I'll see you over there. Peace.